Welcome to episode 94 of The Leap Home, The Beast Within.
In this week's episode, Sam has to help find vital medication for a fellow Vietnam veteran without risking arrest for either one of them. When a former friend turned cop makes it clear that he's going to track them down, Sam must reach out to try and heal historical wounds. Meanwhile, a child falls down a hole, and Sam must persuade a woman to break him out of jail by threatening to let her son die if she refuses. Will this strategy pay off, or is everyone in big trouble?
Anyway, if you take him into town, Luke will arrest him.
For what?
Stealing chickens.
What?
Afternoon, Ian, how are you?
I'm not too bad, well fed.
Stealing chickens again?
Well, you could say stealing at the prices I paid.
That reminds me of Teen Wolf.
Does it? Do they steal chickens?
No, but the bad guy, the bad head teacher in that accused Michael J. Fox or his dad of stealing chickens in the past when he turned into a werewolf.
You have to catch the chickens first.
Yeah, like
It's a different
Rocky.
movie, yeah.
There we go. Anything you want to mention before we begin?
I thought this was an interesting episode that almost tackled some important issues and then kind of skimmed over them at the end.
And it does that thing that we've become accustomed to now where they allude to the supernatural may being real. You know, with the vampire one and at the end.
But they don't just leave it undetermined. Like, this could have had a much better ending if they'd just not done what they did. Anyway, it's an iconic cameo, I'm sure. Before we start, social media accounts, as usual, are at Leap Home Podcast on Twitter and Facebook and so on. We have show notes at theleaphome.com every week. And if you want to hear next week's episode already, head to YouTube to the Colombo Podcast Productions channel, where everything airs 1 week before it comes on the podcast, and you can like, subscribe and hit the notifications bell to be alerted as soon as they appear.
Ready or not, I am cracking on. A boy's bedroom.
I don't think it is.
Well,
because they refer to this later on as having been a pharmacy.
What?
Yeah, because he was breaking into the pharmacy to steal the pills.
No, the whole family were there.
I know, this is what I found very confusing.
No, he stole the pills from the pharmacy earlier and then...
So why is he at the house?
Creeping into a boy's bedroom.
That doesn't make any sense either.
It does if you're a furry.
It's not the boy's bedroom because...
It was a cabin or something like that.
It's not because Luke tells them to go home after he's been out to look for Sam.
I watched this about a month ago, I can't remember.
I found the whole thing very confusing, but I think this is supposed to be the back room of a pharmacy.
No, because neither of them are pharmacists.
I know.
Parents.
Yeah, none of it makes sense. Someone can maybe explain to us what we've
No, it's definitely not a pharmacy. This is either their home or their lodge, a sort of holiday cabin type thing.
But it does make sense for Sam to be in the window then, with the story.
Okay. Anyway, he finds himself dressed as a furry.
Yes.
Perched on a teenage boy's bedroom window.
Let's see.
And he falls out when this kid screams. His parents rush in and the youngster claims that he saw Bigfoot.
Oh boy.
After the credits, we return and it seems that the lad is excited about the prospect of what he has just witnessed.
Yes, the father is going to head out and take a look around outside, and Sam hears them discussing this.
Well, yeah, he says he's going to go and get his shotgun, so it's not just a look, it's, there's an intent to maim or kill.
Yes.
And so Sam, who's hiding down beside the window, hears this and makes a run for it into the nearby woods as we see it as when...
It's the 6th of November 1972.
Now in with the trees, he shouts for Al but gets a fright when another man in hunting gear covers his mouth and pulls him to the ground, but only as a means of keeping him from being spotted by the father.
Yes, he calls Sam Henry and urges him to get out of here before the dogs are sent.
Yeah, by Luke. So yes, that's not the boy's father.
Well, he's not, he's a stepfather.
Yeah.
Yes.
Back in the cabin, the boy Daniel insists to his mom Karen and Luke, the stepfather, that he is not lying, even though it appears he is known for having a vivid imagination.
Yeah, so they haven't explained that he's a stepfather at this point, so there was some confusion when Daniel says he saw Bigfoot with his dad, but yet the father figure here seems completely sceptical.
Yeah, I think it's around about this time we find out this relationship. So we do indeed learn that Luke is the stepfather, as he mentions how, as you say, he knows exactly how Bigfoot looked when he saw him or it with the dad, but has to concede that he wasn't wearing his glasses.
Yes, and at this point Luke has a prescription bottle that he's found outside the property.
Yes, and he identifies the creeper as who?
Henry Adams.
A guy who apparently peeps in boys' windows. Well, that's what it is.
This is what they're trying to say. I don't really understand. Yes, so he's figured out that's who Daniel saw through the window and tells Karen to take Daniel and head home. So they're not at their house, but who knows where they actually are.
I think it's like I just assumed it was a holiday, a vacation cabin.
Winnebago.
Mind you, if it's so easy to drive home.
Yeah, right next to the house.
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense, does it?
Or maybe it's a hunting lodge.
It could be. Could be. A dacha. Not a dacha. Yeah.
Is that not a car?
Yeah, well, it is now.
Okay. What's he going to do?
He's going to get help from Jim Curtis.
Who's that?
That's a fellow cop. I think we found out Luke's a cop, and this is his fellow cop.
Deputy.
Perhaps.
Yeah, I think he's a sheriff.
Is he the sheriff? It doesn't say sheriff on his uniform, but I assume from the way he acts that he is the sheriff.
Yeah.
And Daniel is not allowed to stay. He's told to stay with his mother and stop talking about monsters.
Back in the woods, Sam finds himself at his camp with his friend Roy, as he considers that this is a hairier leap than he expected, but knows that he's not Bigfoot, which he then confirms by looking in a mirror to see a bearded mountain man.
He says he's not far off.
Yeah.
Roy, which is this other guy, thinks that they've lost their tail and asks Sam whether he's okay before reminiscing about a time in Vietnam when they flushed a tunnel near the demilitarised zone.
Yeah, and because of this, he has developed PTSD.
Yes. However, he has a technique that Sam has taught him where he can close his eyes and pretend to be invisible.
Yeah, it's not really the technique that helps. He is reliant upon medication, which
That's
was
also true, yeah.
The pills that we saw.
And this is what he asks Sam now. He asks Sam if he got them, which is obviously the pills that Luke has found.
Yeah, but Sam, understandably, doesn't know what he's talking about. But Al arrives to inform him that he means, is it phentoline or
phenolphthalein,
something like that, which he needs to prevent having fits. Roy, that is.
Fitzroy.
Fits all.
Sam didn't or doesn't have them, obviously. He dropped them when the kid screamed, he says, but promises Roy he'll get them again. But this is bad news for Roy.
Okay, but here's the thing. Luke said that they picked up the pills and it was Henry Adams.
Yes, so what's happened is the old doctor who's just died, we're about to find out, has been prescribing these to Henry, who's been taking them to Roy, who can't go to town because he's going to get arrested for stealing
why
chickens.
Would the doctor be prescribing?
Because he's helping out.
Right, okay.
Because that's why Luke's outraged when he learns the doctor's been giving him medication.
Yeah.
Although he just found some of it, so I don't know.
Now, at this point, Roy has a panic attack, which Sam manages to talk him back from. Is that what I think you mentioned that? Is that at this point?
No, that's a different... So the technique earlier was to avoid getting caught in Vietnam, and he's now got a new breathing focus thing. He's this kind of New Age Zen technique that clears the snakes out of his head.
He calms down, and when he goes to wash his face in the river, Al is able to provide some further information on their background.
What is going on here? I don't know, but that was kind of close. Your name is Henry Adams, and the little guy there is Roy...
Roy Brown, you told me. What else?
It's November 6, 1972, and you're in the mountains here in the state of Washington.
Camping?
No, you live here. You and Roy were in Vietnam together. Henry was a grunt and Roy was a tunnel rat.
What's a tunnel rat?
Well, it's a little guy. Because of his size, he could burrow down into tunnels and flush out the enemy. See, it was one of the most dangerous jobs we had over there. In fact, Henry says that's how come he got hurt.
What happened to him?
Well, they had tracked some VC to a series of tunnels, so they sent Roy down in there to check the location, but they knew he was coming somehow, and he caught a bullet in the head. That's how come he's a little slow.
Why are they living up here, Al?
Well, a lot of vets decided they would stay away from people when they got back home.
Why?
It's simple. No people, no war.
Well, then why am I here?
Don't know yet. Ziggy's still working on the data.
Well, why don't you go back and see if you can speed her along, okay?
Okay. Why don't you check in the shack? Did you check the shack? There might be something in there to help you figure this out.
First of all, apologies to anyone offended by Al's use of the word slow there to describe Roy. Not very PC.
No longer acceptable.
That job that they talked about Roy having done sounds horrific.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't class myself as a claustrophobe, but I could certainly... Yeah, I could feel my palms sweating slightly as you think about what must have went on.
I think this is probably a good point to mention that throughout this episode, Dean Stockwell does a really good job of portraying Al's sympathy and empathy for the Vietnam veterans without having to actually talk about it. Because we've obviously heard all of Al's background in previous episodes, and he doesn't bring it up in this one, but you still get that same feeling that he's going through it with them and he understands exactly how they feel.
Yeah, well, he'll always be on their side.
Yeah, for sure.
Meanwhile, we do in fact discover that Luke is the local sheriff and he wants to find Sam himself rather than deputise more men as suggested by Deputy Jim, who leaves for the night and is returning for a fresh start in the morning.
Yeah, I've got serious questions throughout this episode about Luke's policing. For a start, he's just told his wife that he's going to go out with this other colleague and hunt for Sam, and he didn't do it. He just went and sat his day.
Yeah, because Jim's I'm not going out just now. I'm not doing that. I'm going home, I'll finish my shift.
And later on, it's even worse. He gets told that his stepson is missing, and instead he takes a call from somebody and sits at his desk all morning.
There are a number of dubious decisions in this episode we'll get to.
Anyway, after this colleague leaves and puts out the lights, Luke heads over to his desk, puts on his little lamp and starts reminiscing about his life before the Vietnam War and during it, I think.
Yes, he looks through an old album which includes a photo of the wrestling team that has him and Sam as team members, as well as, I think it's obvious here, Daniel's father.
John, but also Roy as well.
Yeah.
So they're all in that group. Yeah, but I didn't pick John as being the father quite yet, but later on, yeah.
Okay. There is a sadness which is compounded by with a flashback of an explosion which we assume caused the death of Daniel.
Yeah. We then get a nice segue to Sam looking at a copy of the same photo in his own shack.
Well, you say it, a nice segue. It is extremely forced and coincidental.
Well, they're both looking at the same picture at the same time.
Yes. And he recognises himself, Roy, and the man who chased him with the shotgun. And he wonders why.
Fortunately, the man he's leaped into has kept a very detailed journal for a number of years, including during his time in Vietnam.
Yes. Now, as he reads this, we transition to a flashback of John telling the others that they have to secure the village, even though it appears that Luke wants to move on and not kill the remaining old man.
Well, yeah. Luke scouted this shack that they're meant to blow up.
Yeah. Securing is just a euphemism for kill everyone who's here.
Yes, and he says, it's just an old man, let's leave it. But John's like, no, we've been told this is a VC command centre, we need to destroy it. And basically, Luke and Sam are...
Oh, I think Henry, all the others refuse.
Are like, look, no, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
Let's let the bombers will come in and they'll get him anyway.
And so he accepts the challenge to do it himself.
Well, it's not even that. He says that orders have to mean something. So he's not willing to put up with what they've put up with and accept it's not been for anything.
Yeah.
So he has to go along with this obvious fiction in his head that they're the good guys and they're doing something that they should be doing.
Well, it's a little bit a few good men, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's that decision, are they should they be following orders no matter what the moral or legal...
Yeah. And we hear John say it has to mean something because he's obviously torn as well.
In any case, he walks into the hut and is immediately killed when the whole place explodes.
So has the old man rigged it to blow up?
Maybe not him, but maybe people who were previously there. Well, that's what you get.
That's it. Roy, at this point, back in the present, shows up at the door of the shack, but won't come in because he's too claustrophobic to even be indoors after his experiences.
Yes. Instead, he thanks him for helping him earlier and says goodnight, as we see he's a very anxious person.
Very much.
Sam watches as he takes to his outside bed by the fire, as Al tells him that he is there to get Roy's meds, or it is likely he will die from a seizure the following night.
Well, 97.6%, it's not definite.
Not definite, no. Would you be willing to take that punt?
3 weeks ago or whatever it was, we saw he had to wait for 100% certainty before he would act on anything.
So back at now, is this the house? Or
this is now the house.
Okay, yes. So at their house, things are tense between Daniel and his mom, who wants him to let go of his Bigfoot fantasy and is not happy to hear that he's been hanging around with old man Hawkins, who claims he once ate dinner with the creature. This is very Martin Doc.
He says that because his dad died doesn't mean he will as well, and she should stop babying him.
Well, stop talking about monsters.
Well, yes, that's true. Luke returns at this point and makes the blandest statement in the history of television.
What does he say?
It's cold outside.
Yeah.
That's great, thanks, Luke, great.
He also ridicules his stepson for believing in these creatures and insists that he can't go around telling people he saw Bigfoot, as it was in fact Sam, a disturbed individual. And I think that, you know, there are ways of doing these things, but yes, if your son was telling everyone, you say, no, calm that down, you're going to look like a crazy.
Yeah. There's no doubt after this scene, of course, who Daniel's father is. We should say that's very much about to be confirmed.
Yeah, well, he storms off after Luke tells him that he needs to grow up and responds by reminding him that he's not his father.
Yes, his father died in Vietnam, he says, which puts all the pieces together for those who are a bit slower than everybody else.
Can't say that.
No, I mean, getting to the point.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's say that. I mean, that's...
Luke insists that Karen lets him leave, and they have a little tiff, but nothing major.
Yeah, well, I think there's a discussion about, you know, there can't be an expectation that Daniel forgets who his real father is. But Luke snaps back that he knows this and is reminded of John every time he looks at her son before there's a quite awkward silence.
Yeah.
At the camp.
Sam is clearly moved by Henry's journal and its tragic story.
Yes, he is. He's still reading through these truthful events in Henry's journal and admits to Al that he doesn't like the story he is reading, and he mentions the 4 high school buddies who went to war.
Yes.
Well, Al understands that it won't and rarely has a happy ending.
Of course. Meanwhile, we check in at the house where Karen, who seemed to be like a sort of dollar store Famke Janssen.
Maybe, yeah. I thought she was quite hot.
Oh, yeah, I mean, that's not an insult by any means.
Well, it's a little bit of an insult.
It's only relatively speaking, that's a very high value thing that you're comparing to.
Yeah, but I think if you were to say that to her face, she may be insulted.
I don't know, maybe we should phone her up and see what she thinks.
Hope she's not listening.
I think she'd enjoy the comparison.
Okay.
Anyway.
A peak Famke Janssen?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
So from the Rounders period, perhaps?
The James Bond period.
Okay.
Yeah. Or when she was in Star Trek.
Okay.
Anyway, Karen checks in on Daniel, who's in a huff.
Yeah, I think she's quite surprised to find him in bed without being told to go there, and sees that he's been looking at a photo of his father just before he left for the war.
This kind of reminded me a bit of the episode where Al's wife was waiting for him when he was in prison. She had the photo of him when he was a younger man. And so on. And
this episode also has similarities to the one with the UFO and the old man.
Yes.
Anyway, she tells him how nervous his dad was to go and is a bit taken aback when he asks if she still loves him.
Yes, and she explains that she'll always love him and he's kind of frozen in time by having died there, but he wants to know why she then married Luke.
And she tells him that she was scared when her life was dramatically changed and Luke was able to empathise with her as he was John's best friend.
It's kind of a shared grief thing,
yes,
but it's still creepy.
It's I wrote here, it's a bit of a Sam move. He's moved in on a very vulnerable woman.
Yes, exactly. Sam could have been leaping into him. In fact, maybe he was.
Yeah, leaping into her more like.
Okay.
Anyway.
She leaves at this point and Daniel immediately goes and grabs his camera out of his cupboard and makes for the window.
Yeah, like the killers in Scream. Downstairs, Karen wants to know what Luke's plans are and reveals that she knows a little more than he thought about what is going on.
So what are you going to do about Henry and Roy?
I'll do my job.
Luke, Henry didn't mean to scare Daniel. He just wanted Roy's medication, that's all. If Doc Kramer hadn't died, he wouldn't even have had to break in like that.
Kramer was giving Henry drugs?
You make it sound like he ran an opium den. Roy was sick. He needs the medication to control his seizures.
And why didn't he come in and see a doctor like everybody else?
Because he knows that you'll arrest him and put him in jail.
Karen, he's a thief.
A thief. He stole a couple of chickens because he was hungry. Why can't you just let this go?
Look. I don't make the law. I just enforce it.
So, He thinks he was responsible for the death of his best friend, but then he marries the friend's wife.
Look, according to the Journal, John Burke was the ranking officer on all sweep and destroy missions. Now, he tells Luke to go and secure an enemy hooch, but Luke refuses. So then John goes in instead, and there's an explosion.
Well, he could have been brought up on charges. If that journal is correct, he was disobeying orders.
Yeah, except that there were only 2 witnesses, and neither one of them ever came forward.
Yeah, Henry and Roy.
You got it.
Well, no wonder Luke wanted to keep them out of the picture. They're the only ones that know what really happened. Unless maybe the wife... Let's see, the wife's name... Karen. Do you suppose she knew?
That's a good question. You know, it's really crazy, Al. A man refuses to kill and then spends the rest of his life feeling guilty.
What the hell's that?
So this journal obviously doesn't mention the fact that Roy and Henry agreed with Luke that they shouldn't be going in.
Obviously
Otherwise,
not.
why would Sam be talking about it in this way?
Yeah. And Al's a bit too much by the book for my liking.
Well, again, I think he's got that same mindset as John, that if the orders didn't mean anything, what we were doing there.
Back at the camp,
Yeah, that noise that we heard at the end of the clip was Roy having a seizure.
and Al confirms that although he doesn't die until tomorrow, the lack of medication means that these fits are getting stronger.
For some reason, despite being a qualified doctor, Sam thinks it's possible for Roy to swallow his tongue and depresses it with a wooden spoon,
Yeah.
which you shouldn't really do to someone who's having a seizure.
Should you not?
No, you don't put things in their mouth.
All right. See, I know nothing about it, so I would assume I've seen that in the movies. You put a wallet inside or something to stop them biting their own. No?
I don't believe so.
All right. Okay. Maybe some medical experts can tell us.
Yeah. Anyway, the seizure eventually ends, and Al emphasises to Sam that he simply cannot take Roy into town for treatment. The doctor's dead, and there won't be a new one till the day after tomorrow.
So it's clear that Luke isn't worried about the chicken theft, stealing 2 chickens. It's more to do, obviously, with the who knows what.
What is it though? Because they could just... I've got questions about this that we'll come back to. Luke's motivations mystify me throughout this episode. Anyway.
And also the fact that Roy's saying, "Oh, I can't get into town." If I'm dying or potentially going to die because of my condition,
Yeah.
I would happily risk that.
I think though, if he gets arrested, that'll be it for his claustrophobia. Would be...
But he's only,
Going through the
but you're not going to be. I mean, okay, he's talking about stealing 2 chickens.
Yeah.
What's that? A small fine. You're not going to get locked up, are you? For
Yeah, well, on the day though, he'll get taken in and put in a cell.
yeah, would you?
You can't even go inside the shack.
See, what should happen is, I don't know. I mean, whose chickens is it? Sam
Yeah,
should.
that's never made clear either.
Yeah, Sam should find out who it is and go and say, okay, there's 2 chickens, I'll replace. How much are they worth? A couple of dollars. There you go. Can we forget this?
Yep.
The guy was starving. I'm sure the person who had the chicken stolen isn't that vindictive.
They're not even in the episode. They can't
No.
be that important.
Anyway,
I think it's at this point that Sam realises another way that it might be possible to help Roy.
look, no, sorry, but it's not just about the chickens. I think at this point we find out that
This is
there's
where
a,
the pharmacy gets mentioned.
yes, so there's a arrest warrant out for Sam for trying to steal from the pharmacy. It says trying to, but we know he did.
Yeah, but then Luke recovered the stuff that he was trying to steal.
Yeah.
So that was the pharmacy, or he, on his way from the pharmacy, stopped by the hunting shack to stick his nose through the window.
Was he maybe trying
It's
to...
when he comes back from that window that Roy says, "Did you get them?"
Yeah, why was he perfing in a boy's window?
No, I think that must have been the
That's
pharmacy.
not the pharmacy. None
It
of
doesn't
them-
make sense.
They're not
What Roy says
pharmacists.
doesn't make sense if it wasn't the pharmacy. Why would he, coming out of that window, be grabbed by Roy, who then asks him, "Did you get them?" if that wasn't where he was stealing from?
Who else might have them then? So, in a small town, does she maybe hold on to them?
Unless it's the doctor owns that house and they were just clearing it out because he's dead. I don't... There's nothing explained. It doesn't make any sense. The whole thing is confusing to me.
Maybe he was there just to steal some food.
Having already stolen the drugs from the pharmacy earlier on.
And and now he's going back to his camp.
Via the hunting lodge.
Fear hunting. Well, if they're hunting, they'll have killed some animals, to chickens or whatever it is they're doing.
I don't know. But we're searching for answers that aren't in the episode.
Yeah. Al, I think, tells him that he's got to buy enough time for Roy to allow the new doctor to arrive.
Yep. So Sam thinks of a potential herbal remedy.
An herbal.
herb. It's called lobelia, after Lobelia Sackville-Baggins from The Hobbit,
Indeed.
Lord of the Rings.
So they set off into the woods to find something that looks like a weed but has blue and white flowers.
This is ridiculous. Oh, let's go into this wood and it'll definitely be there. Oh, look, here's the one plant of it in this entire wood.
Apparently it's got things in the petals that act as a relaxant.
But it needs to be boiled down into a drink so it's not too toxic.
Sam is then startled by the sound of a breaking branch, which fires up Al's belief in the fantastical. He's so...
Gullible?
Yeah.
Or no, credulous, I think is the word, yeah.
Again, I've said this before so many times, these are cutting edge scientists.
Yeah. And they're spooked by... Yeah.
However, Sam ignores this and heads back to start the boiling process.
We're meant to assume it's Daniel.
Yes. Or no, Bigfoot maybe.
A Bigfoot, yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Anyway, by the next morning, Sam's back in camp and he's in voiceover heard wondering about life in isolation and how he's always imagined what it would be like.
Yeah, he's delighted to be woken up by a deer in his cabin. Now, that's my sense of humour, but you see Sam smiling, there's gentle music, a deer wanders into
You want
his
the deer
door.
to shit in the room?
No, I want Roy from outside to blast it with a shotgun.
Well, either one.
Because, they're starving.
Yeah.
And they've got guns, and why is this deer walking around and not... That's what hunters do.
Yeah.
Why is Roy just letting it do this?
Sam tries to befriend the deer, as is his way, but it immediately leaves.
Yes. At this point, Sam is enticed by the smell of the bacon.
Where's that come from?
Well, Roy's cooking it
I
outside.
was just waiting to hear that this bacon was actually like raccoon or something that he's caught.
Yeah.
But he's
But
he's
you're
got
stealing
bacon.
chickens, but you've got bacon.
And eggs.
Yeah.
Which, did he steal the eggs?
Oh, I got them from the chickens.
Alright, so is it chicken bacon?
Yes. No, I just thought to myself, there's no way that Roy would be letting that deer live, because he's awake and sees it.
Yeah.
He's perked up and claims to be as fit as a fiddle and had a great sleep after taking Sam's potion.
It made him sleep like a dead man, which gives Sam a bit of a shiver.
He then coyly tells Sam that he had that dream again about a busty Wanda who sat behind them in history class. So he's dreaming about children.
That line was completely unnecessary for this episode.
Yeah.
So why have they put this in?
Don't know.
Oh, Wanda. Oh, that's extreme. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just then Daniel shows up.
Yes, they hear a noise and
Roy immediately pulls his gun on him, but Daniel asks him not to shoot, so he doesn't.
You should.
Well, that would have rounded things off nicely.
That'll learn him. That's nonsense. Anyway, meanwhile, Luke in his office is loading up his shotgun and ignores Jim when he rhetorically asks if Sam and Roy were friends of his.
Karen rushes in at this point and she's upset that Daniel has gone missing from his room and his camera is gone, and she's pretty sure he's away to try and take a snap of Bigfoot in the mountains.
She rushes in and says, "He has gone." And Luke says, "Who?
Yeah, could be anyone.
Who do you
Jesus.
think? Who do you think Karen would be bursting in and worried about?
Yeah.
You're an idiot."
Luke at this point lies to her and says he will find Daniel before sending her home in case someone calls, and overrules her objections to this suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, she thinks that he's after proof of Bigfoot. That's what he's doing.
Yeah. But Luke has no intention of going to find Daniel, as we're about to find out.
Yeah, back at the camp, they smile and tell Daniel to slow down with his eating before he admits that he's been wandering around all night. Daniel, like his father, is a moron. They're not the brightest, are they?
No, I don't think they're meant to be.
No.
They're just ordinary people. Who are caught up in
Ordinary people. Ordinary people aren't this dumb.
Well, ordinary country people.
Oh.
Yeah, he's been wandering around all night and recognises Sam, who also recognises him as John's son, which is interesting to Roy. He immediately tells a story about John killing a grizzly bear with his bare hands. After then, they were known as his bare hands.
Oh, yeah, very good, yeah. He tells them that people will now know he is up there, which doesn't please Sam, who thinks kidnapping will now be added to the list of charges against him and Roy. Roy is especially shocked to hear that Luke thinks that they're both crazy, before Sam quickly changes the subject to how he scared Daniel the previous night.
Yes, Daniel realises that he mistook Henry for Bigfoot, and Roy says they're not the same height, but Sam smells worse.
Encouraged by having an ally now, Daniel eagerly responds by saying that he also saw the creature when he was with his father, and it happened to be at the same place as Roy spotted it.
Yes. But before they can talk anymore, Roy feels the twinge of an oncoming seizure. So Sam heads inside to make the herbal tea.
But inside, he tells Al that the potion is not strong enough and he needs the pills, and so decides to go into town and will seek out to Luke.
Yes, he urges Daniel to come with him, but he says he refuses to return to town without a photograph of Bigfoot.
So he tells Roy what he's doing and allows Daniel to stay with him. So he's allowing the kid to stay with the guy who he knows is due to die any point.
With the brain injury.
Yes.
And Al encourages this.
It's a nonsense.
Yeah.
In any case, a little bit later, we see Luke having a local call interrupted by the surprising sight of his old buddy.
Mrs. Jenkins, I'm going to have to call you back. Well, you're full of surprises, aren't you?
I think we should talk, Luke.
Is that right?
I know you've had a lot of things happen in your life that you just as soon forget about. But they did happen. It seems to me like now's probably a good time to deal with it.
Deal with it? Like you have? Look at yourself, Henry. Look at what you've become.
And what have you become, Luke?
What do you want?
Roy's sick. If he doesn't get his medication, he's gonna die.
Wasn't too sick to steal those chickens.
This has nothing to do with stealing chickens, and you know it. Now, I know that things happened over there, terrible things. But they're no excuse for what you're doing right now. Now, I want your word as a friend that if I bring Roy in for treatment, you will not take him into custody. What do you say?
I say you're under arrest.
Yeah, so from that, it's pretty clear that it's not about the chickens.
No,
It's because he doesn't want to. The other two can blab about what happened to.
but he's not eliminating them, he's left them.
As long as they're.
But they agreed with him to start with.
Yeah, but they've nothing to lose now.
He's maybe just paranoid.
Yeah.
I think it is a form of PTSD. I've got to know about this later on. I think Luke is suffering
I'm sure.
because of the event. It's not a rational approach. But we should point out here that Karen came in screaming about her missing son like 20 minutes, at least half an hour ago, and he's sitting at his desk taking a phone call and quite relaxed when Sam comes in. He's obviously got no interest in looking for the kid.
It's not his son.
Yeah, it's not his son, he doesn't care.
At the camp, Roy is having a great time regaling Daniel with tales of high school wrestling glories and reveals that his dad taught him some of these moves.
Daniel's not as interested in that as he is in finding out whether Roy was there when his father died.
And while he admits he was, Roy is uncomfortable with the question and asks if Luke never told him himself.
Daniel says that Luke doesn't like to talk about the war, indicating some kind of trauma there.
And so Roy changes the subject by asking if he can hold the camera.
Daniel's happy with that and enjoys hearing about Roy's Bigfoot encounter.
Yeah, he confirms that it did happen, and he points to a ridge where he saw it, and he claims that he wasn't afraid due to the way the creature looked at him and knew he wasn't going to hurt him.
Things take a turn now, though, because Daniel persuades Roy, who seems to be slightly easy to influence,
He's an idiot as well, yeah.
to leave the camp where Sam instructed them to stay and head out to find the monster.
Yeah. In fairness, I think he plays on his emotions by saying that he owes it to his father to show that he wasn't a liar.
Right.
But his father, I don't think, was a liar. I think he was just stupid.
Maybe.
Believed in monsters.
Well.
Okay, so Sam is now locked up in the jail cell.
Yeah, and Luke tells him that he made a mistake coming back, and now Luke's going to go out there, find Roy, and end this thing. What, is he going to shoot him? He asks Sam why he couldn't have stayed up there, as if they're out the way. I don't need to worry about these guys.
The thing is, by locking Sam up, that doesn't stop him from talking.
No, I don't think Luke's got a coherent vision of what he wants to happen.
No.
He just wants them not to exist, but also not to be harmed. It's a bit strange.
Yeah. Well, I think, okay, maybe it's just a case that he wants him out of the way. He doesn't want to be reminded. So he's not worried about the consequences of them talking. He doesn't think they will. But maybe, as you say, his PTSD is triggered every time they're around.
Yeah, I mean, we're assuming that this is the town they came from originally.
Yes.
Because obviously John's wife is there. So these guys who are living out in the woods went to high school there, have family in that town, but live in the woods. And it's all a little bit...
Banjo territory.
You'd think you'd go further away from where your friends and family are.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Al arrives with bad news.
Yes, Roy and Daniel have left the camp to look for Bigfoot and will both be dead by tomorrow.
Apparently, Danny slipped and fell and Roy had a seizure while trying to help him. So he tells Sam that he must get out there or he must get out of the cell somehow. And so Sam tells him to go and keep an eye on him.
Yes, at this point, Karen answers Sam's short prayer by arriving in the police office.
Yeah, she rushes in looking for her husband. He explains to her what has happened. I don't know why she would believe this. And then, as you alluded to in your summary, frightens her into letting him out by telling her that Roy's seizures are getting worse and without his meds, he will die and therefore so might her son.
Yes, and I'm not telling you where they are or how to find them unless you A, get me out of here, and B, get his meds.
At the peak, we see that Roy has...
we should say that she does let him out.
Yes, yeah.
She goes away and you think she's left, but she comes back with the keys. Small town justice.
Roy successfully led Daniel to the place where he saw the Bigfoot, apparently, and they decide just to sit and wait. Yeah.
Daniel puts the camera in a stupid place.
Al appears and is happy to find that they both seem okay, but isn't happy to hear Roy encouraging him to be a bit of a rebel.
Break away from your mama. Al's advice was to tell him to go home.
Yes.
I think Roy's closer to what's needed here.
He then agrees to let Daniel take a picture of him, but when he turns to get the camera, we have some weird blurry slow-mo effect as we see the kid slip down between the rocks. Now, I was sure that what would happen is the flash would set off the seizure.
Right, no, that didn't happen.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah, he didn't even get to take the photo.
No.
The camera got knocked off, and when he scrambled after it, he fell into a crevice and died. Or got knocked out anyway. Roy, at this point, starts to freak out, and we get a nice little effect as Al sachets down the rock face.
Yes, before quickly leaving to go and get Sam. However, he is also in a pickle.
Yes, but fortunately, just about 100 yards away.
Yeah, he's in a truck with Karen, but they've got stuck. And then things get worse when Al arrives and tells him what has happened. And so, he and Karen arrive at the peak on foot to find...
Seconds later.
Yes. Roy rocking back and forth in quite a state.
Yes, Sam gives Roy his meds at this point and scrambles to where Al says Daniel is in the crevice.
However, before they can attempt a rescue, they are stopped by the sound of Luke pumping his shotgun.
What did he do to him?
He didn't do anything to him. He slipped and he fell in this. Hold on, why don't you put the gun down and give us a hand? Luke! Luke, John's death wasn't your fault. It was a war. Things happen in war.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you, but just didn't know how.
It's all right.
No, let me finish. It was my fault that John died.
Why? Because you couldn't kill an old man?
You knew? But you didn't say anything.
I said I do. I figured that was enough. Please.
It's never explained how Karen knows what happened.
No.
And given that there was only 3 people there who saw what happened, maybe she's been reading Henry's diaries when he's been out hunting.
Possibly.
And maybe Luke talks in his sleep. Who knows?
At this point, Luke lowers his gun and Sam reaches under a rock, but the gap is too small to get through, and so he turns to Roy, who is still nearly catatonic.
This is a really unreasonable request to make.
A fear of heights. Jump out of that plane, will you?
Yeah, this will cure you. Roy, I know that you can't even go inside, but here, back down the tunnel.
You're trying not to hyperventilate. Roy accepts what he has to do And then we immediately cut to Daniel being dragged out. Obviously, they didn't have the budget to create that tunnel set.
No, it reminded me of, did you ever read the stuff about the guy that died trapped in the cave upside down?
Oh, with his feet. Oh,
Yeah.
there's a good YouTube, when I say good, there's an impressive YouTube video on what happened with animations, and it is just nightmare fuel stuff.
Oh, it's absolutely grim. I just don't understand why anyone would try and even do that. So like squeezing through tunnels like this smaller than your body.
It is repulsive, that whole potholing thing. If I was doing that, I would insist on having a cyanide capsule in my mouth for these very situations.
I wouldn't be doing it.
I couldn't.
There's no reason.
No.
Even if I did it success, I wouldn't feel good about it. I just feel, thank goodness I'm not dead.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Hobbies that can kill you, hey?
Yeah.
Anyhow, we do see Daniel being pulled out alive, followed by Roy, who has
he's alive, but he's unconscious and he's cut.
Followed by Roy, who has been cured of his trauma by this incident, and possibly also from his seizures.
Yes. Who Sam congratulates, and as you say, it seems that all his PTSD conditions have been erased by this one act. Karen then informs them that Daniel's vitals are good. So wait a second, maybe she holds some stock. So how would she knows about his vitals?
Yeah.
She seems to have some sort of medical...
Sure, she's a nurse. Maybe that's why they were at the pharmacy.
Yes. No. Maybe in a small town, maybe she
wouldn't have prescribed meds in her.
No, but maybe she holds stores them or something and is able to... I don't know. But yeah, she talks about his vitals. That's medical speak, isn't it? Your mum wouldn't normally talk about...
Yeah, well, maybe that's an explanation. Maybe it was the pharmacy and she's the nurse. She was working there and they were closing it up.
Maybe.
Anyway, the hospital apparently is 30 miles away, but with their truck on the rocks. How did Luke get here? He walked all the way.
Yeah. And so they rushed to this vehicle and they're surprised to see what?
It's fine, it's back on the road. And this would have been a really quite good, mysterious ending.
Not just on the road, but it's pointing now in the right direction. This is, as I said before, another one of the our vampire real endings. Yeah.
Daniel gets loaded in the truck and Sam says he'll just walk whilst making up with Luke, whose trauma is also now resolved by this one moment.
Al ties things up by telling Sam that Roy is fine.
Yeah, he gets a job with the Forest Service as a fire watcher.
Yeah.
Daniel makes it, and Luke and Karen have a couple more kids, so they don't have to pretend that he's okay as their only kid. Nope. They can have ones of their own to concentrate on. And Henry publishes his journal,
which turns into a bestseller, which leaves only one unanswered question.
How was the truck recovered from the rocks?
But this is answered straight away when a shocked Al points at a Bigfoot who turns and looks at them before walking into the distance.
He looks and acknowledges them, I think.
Yeah, and we have a double, oh boy, I've got a double F off.
You didn't think it was like Harry and the Hendersons?
Bigfoot and the Hendersons.
Yeah. Sam leaps at this point and we see him arrive in what appears to be an American Civil War reenactment, maybe?
Well, that's what you'd assume, yes. He's in a river holding a gun, dressed like a Civil War soldier in the middle of a battle.
Strangely, he seems to be near the same bridge where he escaped from that woman who kidnapped him to impregnate her.
Was it? Okay.
Looked to me. Anyway.
Well, maybe trivia next week.
He gives it an oh boy, and we'll find out next week.
Okay.
Luke's mindset, I don't get it. I mean, I assume it must be some kind of PTSD.
I think if we just, we use PTSD for everyone's logic, that would be a blanket.
There's certainly a paranoia to it. So he thinks that he's maybe going to lose everything if his wife finds out that he's responsible for the death of her first husband.
Yes.
So therefore he acts in a way so as to prevent her getting that knowledge, which she somehow already has.
Yes. Well, I think that's it, isn't it? He's happy for them to stay in the mountains.
Yeah.
And this threat of chicken stealing is just a way for them not to come into town.
And I think there's also his policing, to a certain extent, is influenced by the fact that the one time he disobeyed orders, his friend died. So now he's a strict stickler for the rules. Things have to be ordered.
Makes sense, yeah.
Do you think it was reasonable for that one incident to resolve everybody's trauma?
No, I don't think it was at all.
That's absurd, isn't it? Yeah. Did you like the Bigfoot review?
No, I thought it was nonsense.
Okay. Why were they all in the pharmacy at the start?
Why is there a pharmacy in a kid's bedroom in a cabin?
Why is there a kid's bedroom in a pharmacy? What's the point?
I don't know what's going on.
Any other thoughts?
Nah, again, it was perfectly, it was quite fun.
They almost touched on some issues of trauma, loss and grief, and
but at this point they've given up.
Didn't quite finish it off,
Like us.
This is happy ending, quickly, wrap up on the final scene.
Yeah.
Can't have anyone sad at the end, except for that one guy in the bank robbery episode who ended up as a Jakey and died.
Murdered in an alleyway. There you go.
Okay, let's get into the trivia. This originally aired on the 16th of March 1993 and was directed by the very famous Gus Trigonis. This was his only quantum leap. After appearing in the original film version of West Side Story, he's mostly worked as a director, including on things like The Twilight Zone, Sequest, DSV and Baywatch, but is best known for being married to Goldie Hawn for 7 years at the start of the 70s. He's now 86, he's retired and he lives in the suburbs of LA.
Before the big man stepped in.
Well, that's it. This one was written by a familiar name, John DeQuino. This was his only script for Quantum Leap, but you'll remember him as Frank LaMotta from Jimmy and Deliver Us from Evil.
Ah, all right.
This was probably his highest profile writing credit on screen, actually. Luke was played by Pat Skipper. This was his second Quantum Leap, so if you want to hear more about him, go back to the podcast for MIA. Karen was played by Eileen Seeley. This was her only Quantum Leap. She also appeared in things like Batman Forever, Star Trek The Next Generation, ER, and Down and Out in Beverly Hills. Her last screen credit was in 2000 and she's now 65. Roy was played by Sean Sullivan. This was his only Quantum Leap. He's a 3-time Grammy Award winner for producing bluegrass and country music.
Yeah, but I recognise him from You're Going to Tell Me.
Yeah, he's appeared in things like Back to the Future Part 3.
Yeah, but no, that's not the most famous one.
Babylon 5.
No.
Wayne's World.
Yes.
And one of my favourites, The Umbrella Academy, where he plays the older version of number 5. He's now 65, still active. Young Daniel was played by David Tom. This was his only Quantum Leap. He won a Daytime Emmy for his work on The Young and the Restless. And he's also appeared in things like Pleasantville, Veronica Mars, and Criminal Minds. His sisters, Nicole and Heather, are both very successful actors. One of them's done thousands of episodes of one of the soaps. He's now 46, he's still active. Henry Adams, who Sam leapt into, was played in The Flashbacks and Reflection by Mike Jolly. This was his only Quantum Leap. He's also in Sister Act and Forrest Gump. He's now 65. His last screen credit was in 1999.
Not so jolly now, eh?
Yeah. Apparently none of Scott Bakula, Dean Stockwell, or the writer John DeQuino liked the addition of Bigfoot to the original story at the end.
I would agree with him, yeah.
Outside of Deborah Pratt and Donald Bellisario, this is the only time there's a script written by someone who's also appeared on the show. When this episode originally aired, Sam leapt into the start of Memphis Melody, but it wasn't the next episode to be shown. It's coming up, we've not got to that yet if you don't recognise the name of that one. In terms of things that we learned, Sam knows herbology. Mm-hmm. Anything else that we learned about them? Al still likes the heebie-jeebie things, yeah. Respective on this date, so we've got the 6th of November, possibly also the 7th of November. So Rutgers and Princeton met, first ever intercollegiate game of Ultimate Frisbee. Actors Tandy Newton and Rebecca Romijn were both born. And on the 7th, Richard Nixon won re-election in a landslide, but would of course not be able to complete that second term.
I also have the death of now I'm not sure how it's pronounced, Billy Murcia, the original drummer with the New York Dolls. While on tour in England, I don't know why I'm laughing, he passed out from an accidental heroin overdose, but in an attempt to revive him, he was put into a bathtub and force-fed coffee, which resulted in asphyxiation and death.
That's really unfortunate.
Yeah. Never mind the tongue and the seizure and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Don't force feed
liquids.
Yes. Number ones, the US had I Can See Clearly Now by Johnny Nash, whilst in the UK it was Claire by Gilbert O'Sullivan.
Next week, Sam has to join the Civil War effort and avoid preventing one of his grandparents from being born in the leap between the states. So we will see you in 1862.
Until then,
cheerio.
Bye bye.